we go. This is our brand new lecture, Half Hour to Health. So the first thing I want to do is simply thank you all for coming, taking time out of your busy lives and your busy schedules to be here tonight. So this is Dr. Kalaba from Lifeline Wellness Center, if we happen to have any guests. But for all of you who are active practice members, you know that we like to build community, and our practice members are like family to us. So oftentimes in the office, and today was a great example, having Gratitude Day, and during our events, we are really fun and playful. And then there's a time to be a bit more serious. And so tonight is one of those nights, because this information that I'm going to be presenting to you is so crucial to understand for your best health possible. So I know that the information is valuable. I hope that I'm going to be entertaining and maybe even get a few chuckles, but mostly I'm going to be serious tonight. And so I just want to set that up so you know what to expect. We're going to jump right in. So I want you to know that you need to get ready. You need to get ready because I'm about to teach you, what I'm about to teach you actually has the power to change your life forever. And the reason I'm so confident of this is because I've simply lived it. It's changed my life forever, and it's affected the lives of my friends and my family as well. So I want you to listen tonight with both your ears and your heart, and to be ready for change. So tonight, you're going to learn how people get sick and how they get well and stay well for life. So as I mentioned before, if there are people on here who are brand new to the practice, and that's a possibility, welcome. You're my guest here tonight, and it's a pleasure to have you. I want you to know that I will be offering a very special health checkup as a gift to you tonight at the end of the lecture, but we'll talk more about that later. So we're going to start tonight by clarifying something that I really want you to understand. There is no longer a mystery. There is no longer a mystery around where sickness comes from and where health comes from. There simply isn't. And as soon as you recognize that, you can breathe deeply and relax and kind of let go. The questions you might have, the concerns, the worries that people have about sickness. Like, how does it happen? Where does it come from? Where will I get healthy? Will I ever be healthy again? How can I be healthy again? That mystery has actually been solved, and that's what I'm sharing with you tonight. So tonight, you'll have a choice, because I believe that you've reached a fork in the road. So you'll have a choice that says, hang on to old beliefs, or embrace the new principle that is revolutionizing health today. And I want you to know that there is a new principle, and it is helping millions of people, men, women, and children who are sick, to get well and stay well. So, and that choice is something that you're going to have to work through for yourself and make that choice for yourself. You're going to have to look at it and say, which direction am I taking? Which side of the road, or which road am I actually traveling down? So things are not always as they seem. Tonight, what I want you to understand is this. Things are not always what they seem. If the cat walking up the stairs, or is the cat walking down the stairs? If you thought it was one or the other, can you see the possibility of the alternative being true? So are you ready to embrace this opportunity to say, I am ready to get rid of my old beliefs around healthcare and embrace a new look at what's possible for my life, for my spouse or my partner or my family's well-being? I'm curious how many people thought the cat was walking upstairs versus downstairs. You have to give me a show of hands. Who thinks the cat's working upstairs? Raise your hand. There should be a little button on the Zoom that you can hit. Great. So let's start with our first piece of science. After death, no matter what the cause of death was, everyone on the planet, no matter race, color, age, size, gender, no matter what the cause, After death, our bodies decay at exactly the same rate. So did you know that? When we think about our favorite shows that people watch, such as like CSI, those type of shows, NCIS, Dateline, other shows like that, why are those shows so interesting? Because they are able to track when someone may have passed away. Did it happen in X location or Y location, in this position, in this time frame, and where they moved? And all of those mysteries are based on science. So as I interact with people around the community, what I learn is that people know this. It's not a surprise. And I think it's because of those favorite TV shows that have actually really brought this to the forefront. So why is it that everyone just after death would decay at exactly the same rate? And there is one principle and one law that governs that exact process. And yet somehow it would be different for healing. Does that make any scientific sense? So in other words, is it possible for decay to follow one set of rules, one set of principles? And decay does that. We know that it does. Is it possible then that healing also follows one core set of principles? That while we're living, there's a core set of principles that tell us how we are best able to stay healthy. And if we lose our health, this is how we gain our health back. So if you're not nodding your head yes, I hope that you will be soon, because tonight, I want you to know and understand that this is no longer a mystery. I want you to know that the philosophy, the science, and the art have come together to understand the truth. The question then is, where are you on this path? Do you understand and have you embraced this principle? So let me go through some examples of kind of what I'm talking about to help you get an idea. So why are some people allergic to pollen? So in this picture, you can see the redness around this woman's eyes. You can tell that she's very uncomfortable. And somebody else who experiences the exact same pollen that she does doesn't have that. It might be another person who lives right next door. It might be somebody in the same family and even in the same household. So they don't get that experience. So why is it that some people have this allergic reaction and others don't? Why do some toddlers get ear infections that are horrible and they're swollen and red and hot and they're crying and it's so painful, and yet another child has never experienced that? How is that possible? How does that work? How is it that someone catches the flu? And maybe you're even thinking of someone right now who seems to have a low immunity, that they seem to kind of catch everything that comes around, while other people don't have a problem with the flu or the sniffles or a cough. Why is that? And there are, of course, numerous other things that lead to hospitalization or medications or somewhere in between. People have problems with muscle pain, joint pain, fatigue, indigestion, skin problems, and much, much more, while somebody else doesn't have any of those things. Why is that the case? Well, if we can answer that tonight, and we can walk away from here with total confidence and certainty about your life, about your future, and maybe about somebody else that you love as well. So family and friends that you'd say, gosh, I'm thinking of someone even now whose face is coming into your mind, of people who have these issues, or people who take medications for high blood pressure, and yet another person who doesn't have high blood pressure at all. So what's the difference between people who are sick and people who are not? I really want to lay this foundation for you as simply and clearly as I can tonight. So here's the first place to start. Friends, healthy people do not get sick. That's the first realization that you need to understand. Healthy people don't get sick. They never have gotten sick. And of course, we know there are people who get sick. We've already seen some examples so far, but healthy people are not part of that group. Well, how is it possible then, you might be asking, if healthy people don't get sick? So here's the answer. Only unhealthy people get sick. You see, healthy people must first become unhealthy, and then unhealthy people become susceptible, and their probability of becoming sick now raises. So does that make sense? So someone must go from healthy to being unhealthy before they actually become sick. Now, they may not experience sickness for weeks or months or even years while they're in the state of being unhealthy, but they're surely headed in that direction. So to reiterate, someone must go from healthy to unhealthy before they become sick. Does everyone understand that? So when does that actually happen? How does that happen? Because that's an absolute key between the difference of being sick or heading towards sickness and being healthy and headed towards greater and greater vitality. And that's the next question I'm going to answer. All illness is caused by the inability to adapt to your environment. I'm going to repeat that. All illness is caused by the inability to adapt to your environment. Somewhere, somehow, and we'll answer that as well, you become unable to properly adapt to your environment. So someone who happens to have red eyes in that pollen experience we just saw, and yet pollen is clearly happening to 10 other people right around them, but it's only the 2 or 3 who have that actual allergic response. Those 2 or 3 are unable to adapt to their environment in that way. And you can say that about virtually any sickness that exists within the body, is that the body has lost its ability to what? To adapt. So now understand that the ability to adapt means you are healthy. So we would have to go from being healthy to unhealthy before sickness can happen. That means we go from an ability to adapt to our environment properly to an inability to adapt somehow. And the degree of that inability determines if you're someone who gets the flu or a cold or a muscle spasm or indigestion or pollen. Is everyone with me on this so far? So up on your screen right now, you're seeing a picture of what you might have seen in a chemistry class. So this is a petri dish, and what we see are cells of the body. And many types of research have concluded the same thing. If you put healthy cells in a petri dish and you do 2 things, 1, you stimulate the cells with the same electrical environment that they're used to in the body, and 2, you feed those cells proper nutrients, then the cells stay healthy. Now, if you take that petri dish and you introduce bacteria, we have those healthy cells and we have bacteria right next to those healthy cells. So healthy immune system cells will actually engulf and destroy the bacteria. But if something happens and the cell's environment has become somewhat toxic and there's a flip, and those cells suddenly went from being healthy to being what? Unhealthy? What does the bacteria do? The bacteria will invade those unhealthy cells in a second. And if you watch it in real time, the bacteria is immediately attacking the unhealthy cell. So the unhealthy cell can get attacked and result in sickness. But if the cell is moving around in its environment, in the tissues, and any foreign toxin that comes around, and that cell is in a healthy position, the bacteria cannot attack, and those healthy cells stay strong. So does that make sense? This is a way I wanted to give you an understanding of what's happening kind of at the cellular level that shows how the body gets sick. And the body gets sick by going from healthy to unhealthy. And something about the environment caused it to no longer be able to adapt. So I just went over a lot. Whew. Let's summarize what we have covered so far. Healthy people don't get sick. Only unhealthy people get sick. You become unhealthy by losing adaptability to your environment. So where does that lead us? The secret to lifelong health and healing is superior adaptability. Can everybody see that? I want you to walk away from tonight's presentation with the confidence that you and your family can have superior adaptability. In all the stressors that exist in our life, we can overcome those stresses and we can have superior adaptability. So let's talk about adaptability. Adaptability is like a grade in school, an A+, B, C-. Who here wants A+ adaptability? Everybody, right? So the question then becomes, what does an F in adaptability mean? So I think we all know what that means. Now, I'm not trying to be morbid or gruesome here. The simple truth is that when we are no longer able to adapt at all, it's the end, isn't it? That's when we pass away or die. It's the end of the cycle of life. And we don't want to get there any faster than necessary. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think people go from an A level of adaptability to an F level of adaptability overnight? Yes or no? Do you think that happens? No. People don't have an A adaptability in the vast majority of the cases, and then they wake up the next morning and they have an F adaptability. What does happen is that their adaptability is shifting and changing, maybe even right under their nose, from an A+ to an A, to a B+ to a B, and yet they hardly even notice that it happened. They simply weren't paying attention. And by the time they've gone from an A+ to a B, how many of you understand that at some point in that experience, they went from healthy to unhealthy? And they still didn't do anything about it. Maybe because they actually haven't gotten sick yet, right? Most people go to see their medical doctor when they're sick, maybe even really sick. So tonight, I want you to understand that there's a new paradigm. Millions of people are making a newer, better choice. And that choice isn't to wait until you are sick, because what science has already taught us is that sickness, the symptoms that we talked about earlier, those are the things that show up last. In any type of illness, the actual symptom is the last thing to appear. So do you understand, folks, that symptoms often take months or even years to show up? So we need to understand, where does A+ adaptability come from? And if we're losing that adaptability, where do we get it back? So the answer and the new paradigm I'm presenting to you tonight is chiropractic. Chiropractic is the art, science, and philosophy of wellness. It's the art, science, and philosophy of living a long, healthy, vital life. So what science recognizes is that the lifeline from the brain down through the spinal cord in our bodies is what generates all actions. It's what generates all chemistry. It's what generates all healing. It's what generates all adaptability. There is no chemistry in our body, hormonally or otherwise, that isn't designed by the brain, communicated through your spinal cord, out the nerves to every organ, tissue, and cell in your body. Everything functions by way of the nervous system. So tonight we recognize that the chiropractic art, science, and philosophy teaches us something. The function of our nervous system dictates our adaptability to our environment. Does everyone follow that? So when we actually start thinking about A+ adaptability, the first place we should be looking is how your nervous system is doing. Because how your nervous system goes is how your health goes. Nod your head or raise your hand if you understand this. Let me see. The nervous system is your lifeline. It's the healing information. The brain is trying to speak to the body every second of every minute of every hour of every day. So the question then becomes, what negatively impacts the function of your nervous system and thus impedes your adaptability? Because the goal is to have A+ adaptability. The number one cause of lowered adaptability is stress. And you've heard us talk about stress in the office over and over again. It's stress. And what's interesting about stress is that you simply can't avoid it. So tonight, I want you to know that stress is not your fault. It can't be avoided. It is part of our human experience. Stress comes in three major forms. You've all heard us talk about this in the office. We have physical, mental, emotional, and biochemical stressors, or we can talk about those as the three T's: traumas, thoughts, and toxins. So traumas don't have to be auto accidents, although I know many of us have been in one or more. Traumas don't have to be sports injuries, although many of us have sprained or strained an ankle or a knee. So who sits more than 2 hours a day? Who's in front of a computer more than 2 hours a day? Raise your hand so I can see you. Those are called repetitive traumas. So those are physical traumas as well. Thoughts, those are things we worry about. Do you know someone who tends to worry often? People who are anxious or have an emotional swing over a certain situation at home, at work, or maybe financial or otherwise. And then we have toxins, and toxins are not just medications. Toxins are things that we eat, what we breathe, all the ways we have toxins that come into our bodies on a daily basis from our personal care products. So we recognize traumas, thoughts, and toxins. And what do they have in common? They're all forms of stress. So while we can reduce stress in our lives, we can never, ever, ever eliminate it. So that's not your job tonight. Figuring out how to eliminate stress is not your job. Your job tonight is to say, how do we actually deal with the stress that we already encounter? Listen carefully. Stress alters your adaptability. Raise your hand if you get that now. So these three types of stress that we talked about in our environment, we experience on a daily basis. And because they're in our environment every day, they have the ability to alter our adaptability every single day. So because of the fact that every one of us, your spouses, your family, your neighbors, the people that you play with, you go to work with, everyone you know is dealing with the same stressors that exist on the planet today. So how many of you would agree that we live in a more stressful environment now than our grandparents did 50 or 75 years ago? Research actually proves that. We see that we are off the charts in stress levels in our daily environment. So I have asked you here for great news tonight, and that is even with the stresses that we deal with every single day, we can still have superior adaptability. We can live long, healthy, vital lives. We can have the kind of life we've always dreamed of, and our children can too. But we have to understand that there's a choice to make. There is one road to health, while everything else leads to a higher sickness probability. And so this is a very important note that I want you to walk away with tonight, is realizing that it is impossible to prevent or remove all stress from your environment. And so I want everyone just to take a nice deep breath right now, blow it in and out, and just be at peace with this idea. It's okay. Stress itself is not the issue. The issue is how do we manage it, and how do we work ourselves into an environment of superior adaptability. So let's talk more about this. Here's something that you may not know. Stress in all its forms attacks the nerve system first. Did you know that? All the sources of stress that we've talked about tonight have one thing in common. They impact our nerve system first. So if you know this, then you have a light-year advantage over anyone you know about how to live a long, healthy life, one filled with superior adaptability. You need to understand that stress attacks your nervous system, but you are not always aware that that's happening. So the first key tonight is to ask, how often are you getting your nerve system checked? Some of you who may be new to our practice might be answering, I don't know that I've ever had that checked. Or I've never had my children's nervous system checked. I didn't even know you could do that. So you know that you can check your blood. You can check your blood pressure. You can check your temperature. And yes, we can check your nervous system. So this is a key part of knowing how to gain superior adaptability. So I want you to take a look at these photos. Some of them are a little more graphic than others, but statistically, 1 out of 4 of you on this webinar were actually born by either forceps or a C-section. So I want you to know that in both of those cases, it is radically more forceful than a natural birth, and that's not your fault. And what I want you to understand is that that force leaves a permanent mark on your nervous system because of the amount of stress that was introduced. And if that's not checked after birth, by the time you get to kindergarten or by the time you graduate from high school, there's a cumulative effect. So no different than someone who gets into an auto accident and the neck whiplashes twice in less than half a second, even less than 10 miles an hour. That's considered a major impact. So tonight, I want you to know that if you had an auto accident and it was 3 years ago or 7 years ago or 15 years ago, and nobody checked your nervous system, that it left a mark. The nerve system remembers that force and ends up having an interference. That interference means the brain can't talk to the body the way that it could and should. And the body can't talk to the brain the way that it could and it should. So there's an interruption in the way the body is talking to the brain and the brain talking to the body. Does that make sense to everybody? So do you understand that when that's happening, your adaptability is lowered? That A+ can't be an A+ anymore. It's now maybe a B+ or a B- or even worse. It's something we need to deal with, whether it's emotional stress, an athletic injury, whatever it may have been. Maybe it's an accumulation of all those things over time. And the problem is that we didn't manage it and has left a mark, and that mark causes lowered adaptability. And lowered adaptability takes us from being healthy to being what? Unhealthy. So we don't ever want to be caught being unhealthy and not knowing it. So having strong adaptability is the difference between health for kids and adults alike, no matter what country you live in, no matter what language you speak. It's your ability to adapt that determines your health. So I want to make sure that you understand, I'm not talking just about chiropractic philosophy here. I'm talking about science. So the textbook that is the gold standard for all medical students, from MDs to chiropractors to acupuncturists, is Guidance Physiology. And Guidance states that the nerve system is a master control system for the entire body. So what that means is for you to have A+ adaptability, your nervous system has to be functioning at its highest level possible. It's that simple. So with everything we've covered so far, I want to do a little summary here. And the first conclusion tonight is that your environmental stresses affect the nervous system and create nerve system overload and interruption that leads to lowered adaptability. So going from health to unhealthy. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you're sick or have symptoms, but what it does mean is that you have lowered adaptability. You may not be at an A+ anymore. You may not even be at a B+. But do we want to wait until we get further from there before we do something about it? So this is why it's essential that each of you and your family members and friends get their nervous system properly checked, because their adaptability and your adaptability may not be an A+. It may not even be a B. So another interesting tidbit here is that posture is a window into your nervous system. So if your posture is off, the nerve system that dictates your posture is also off. Does that make sense? You can't have perfect posture unless you have a perfectly functioning nervous system. So things that stress and attack our nervous system and leave it residual postural imbalances. So you can check your kids by sitting them in a chair, having them close their eyes and look straight ahead. Is their head rotated or tilted? And if it is, that's an indicator that there's already something going on that needs to be addressed. That means there is lowered adaptability. So we sleep in beds that are too soft and it affects our posture. Then we eat breakfast at the kitchen table and we drive to work. We sit in front of a computer all day long, and then we drive home. We relax on the couch and we watch some TV, and then we go back to that soft bed. So does anybody see a problem with that? We now pay a price for it, and that price is lowered adaptability, and that leads us from healthy to unhealthy. So now that we have a high-level overview of lowered adaptability, let's talk a little bit more about chiropractic. So the poster here should be familiar to most of you in the office. Subluxation is the term that you learned when you walked through our front doors. And for any guests who are on the webinar with us tonight, it should soon become a household word, just like cholesterol. So who knows about cholesterol today in our community? Everybody does. Subluxation should overcome and even trump cholesterol because it is so much more important and severe than cholesterol was ever thought to be. Subluxation is nerve interference caused by stress. So we already know that we can't eliminate stress and that stress attacks the nervous system. So this subluxation is the actual term when stress prevents the brain and the body from talking to each other. And you may have not been aware of that. It may be new to you. So this leads us to our second conclusion, where we add subluxation to the equation of lowered adaptability. Does everybody see this? Environmental stress is the thing that causes subluxation. Everyone needs to know this word. Environmental stress, which we cannot avoid, is what causes subluxation. It lowers our adaptability and ultimately leads to illness. So the illnesses that we've already talked about tonight and so many more. Illness and health are no longer a mystery, just like I said. We understand at the fundamental level, and we can actually do something about it. So I want you to know that physical, mental, and chemical stress alter your nervous system signals. Those 3 T's that we talked about that attack the nerve system lower adaptability. So being able to diagnose subluxation, being able to identify and remove subluxation is life-changing. So guess what? This is exactly what chiropractic does. Chiropractic science and art has learned how to find those subluxations, and following a chiropractic adjustment, instantly the nervous system is communicating better than it was just a moment before. So this is what allows you to heal better, because you now have improved adaptability. And we know that the body best corrects and heals by rhythm. So for those of you who are practice members, it's important to understand, and I want to honor that. So when you understand the importance of the recommendations we make, and that each visit actually adds to the next, and that your body corrects and heals to rhythm. So it's important to keep your appointments and your schedule according to your recommendations, because it's not just any adjustment that matters, it's the adjustments in rhythm that matter. So this leads us to our third conclusion. Chiropractic assessment to find subluxations and adjustment to remove subluxations from your nervous system, improve your adaptability. Does everyone get that? Of course, there are supportive measures you can take as well. Yes, things like exercise and nutrition are, of course, are important, but please know that you can't exercise enough, you can't eat well enough, and you can't drink enough water to remove subluxation from your nervous system. So only chiropractors have been trained to do that, and only chiropractic adjustments remove subluxation. So, to prevent nerve system overload and maintain 100% nerve supply, get adjusted regularly. This leaves your body at its most adaptable state possible. Get adjusted, get your power turned on so that the stressors that exist within our world, which we cannot avoid, which attack our nerve system, we no longer fear. If we are getting adjusted, that means our power is on, that means our posture is strong, and we can go out into the world and we don't have to be afraid. We can live our lives fully because we are on a program or a wellness program that keeps our adaptability score closer to an A+ than a C+. So raise your hands or nod your head if you understand what I'm saying. So in the end, this leads us to our last conclusion, putting together all the pieces that we've talked about tonight. for your best chance at optimal health and vitality for life, for you, for your family and your coworkers and your friends, see your chiropractor and get checked for subluxation. It's that simple. It's that simple because a clear, fired up, subluxation-free nervous system helps you be as close to A+ adaptability as possible. And when that happens, transformational healing is also possible. And that's why we see the things that we see every single day in our practice, impacting the lives of our community members. So what we've covered tonight and what you should now understand is how people get sick and how people and how they get well and stay well for life. But why does it matter? Even if you know all of this, what spurs you to make a different choice? Well, that's what we call your why. And that is completely individual for you. So I'm going to attempt to show you a little video here. It's less than 3 minutes, I believe. I'm going to try to play it in the PowerPoint presentation. If it's not playing for you, would somebody please type in a comment and let me know that it's not working?
How do I know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? The key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country. I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just going to show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, once you give me the version, is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick. You know the version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm fine, but blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose. This is called How Do I Know?
Okay, so that video brings tears to my eyes every time I see it. It's really such an amazing example of a person's why. And so I hope you have a few ideas running through your heart and mind about your why right now. Maybe it's because you want to walk your grandkids down the aisle when they get married, or you want to get on the floor and play with your children, or just looking at enjoying your retirement or things like that. So because you know what you know now, how can you possibly make any other decision about your road to health? So remember this slide? It's one of the ones we started with. What choice are you making now and in your future? So as I wrap up tonight, I want to ask for your help in fulfilling our purpose and mission at Lifeline Wellness Center. We truly are passionate about creating our healthiest community possible. We want to help people align their lives so they can express the greatest version of themselves. And we want people to consciously create their own health futures. So who do you know who needs to receive a checkup? Who popped into your head as I was going through this presentation? Have them call the office, mention that you sent them to us, have them mention the video, and they'll receive a $49 new patient exam. This allows them to get a feel for us, discuss their health goals, and decide if we're a good fit for them. Now, more than ever, with everything we have going on, we need a strong, healthy community. And we're doing our part, one nervous system at a time. And so here in a second, I'm going to open up, unmute everybody to see if anybody has any questions. But I want to first just thank everybody for attending tonight. I want to thank you for listening with both your ears and your heart. And I want you to leave knowing that superior adaptability is in your future. You know exactly how it happens now, and you know how to make it happen. So we need a wellness program and a wellness lifestyle through chiropractic care in order for that to take place. And I truly hope that I delivered that simple and clear message to you tonight. And I want to thank everybody again for joining me. And now we're going to see if anybody has any questions.